Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today, and I have a review here for a movie that I grabbed from a Big Lots in Tennessee when my wife and I were on vacation a few months back. It's a movie that I've been very curious about. I figured I would go into it knowing everything and it'd be kind of predictable, but Shudder can kind of pull that on you sometimes. Essentially, this movie I thought was going to be just a zombie film and also a little bit of a Mad Max film, maybe entirely together, but the film is not that. The film has those things in it, both of those things, but it does it in a very different way that I don't think anybody would have predicted going into this movie. So that film is a 2019 movie called Blood Quantum. Now, Blood Quantum was a very interesting story to me. It loses its way a little bit, but before I even get into it, I gotta tell you, the music in this movie, oh man, it's amazing. It's kind of that 80s synth thing, but it's got more of the John Carpenter vibe to it of being very atmospheric, bringing you into the story. That was the best part of the whole movie, to be honest with you. But essentially, this movie is at the beginning of a zombie apocalypse that's on an Indian reservation, which I thought was super interesting. As an Indian myself, I was very curious to see what was going to happen with this movie. And at first, we just follow like a fisherman who is doing his usual thing, fishing, and then gutting fish. The gutted fish begin to come back to life and wiggle around. I'm petrified of fish, as many of you know. I'm horrified by fish. I don't know what it is about them. I don't like things that can't blink. And these things are flopping around everywhere, and he is like, I've been fishing for like my whole life, and I've never seen this before. And then other animals begin to come back to life. And then eventually dead people become back to life, you know? And then eventually those dead people begin to try to eat other people who are not dead. So it just becomes the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, but we see it from this reservation, and we begin to follow a character played by a man named Michael Greyeyes, who I guess is like the sheriff of the reservation. What do you call that? Anyway, he is phenomenal. I don't know who this guy is, Michael Greyeyes. He was phenomenal in this. I loved him. I thought he was great here. A lot of people in the movie were really great, including his like dad character or whoever the old man character is in the film. Now, it kind of becomes, I guess what you could say is like an ensemble film. Like a lot of characters were kind of introduced to kind of eventually become one team working together to try to survive this thing, because eventually when things begin to really get bad, we skip to 6 months later. However, there's something very interesting about this, even though we're not too much outside of the Indian reservation seeing what's going on in the outside world. What they're really finding out is that apparently the Indian blood, for some reason, doesn't have a chance. It's kind of like a cure. It's also like you have a way to not be infected if you get bitten, which was super interesting to me. I will tell you, stuff like that didn't really pan out that well for me. I feel like it's not very well explained, or even explained at all for that matter, in a good way. But the film itself, when it does that 6 months time skip, for me, it totally began to lose me, because we started focusing on all these other characters outside of the old man who's just carrying around a samurai sword, which was awesome. It reminded me of a Jonathan Mayberry short story I read years ago that I really enjoyed, about a samurai going to a zombie island to save somebody. If you haven't read Jonathan Mayberry's books, you're absolutely missing out. Phenomenal writer. But anyway, this may have been inspired by that. I don't know. But that first portion of the film, like the first 20, 30 minutes about the Indian reservation, the introduction of the apocalypse, man, that stuff was fantastic. I loved it. One of the other compliments I have for this film from beginning to end, aside from the soundtrack being amazing, or the score being amazing, whatever, was the practical effects. I don't think there was any CGI in this movie. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but man, I am telling you, the practical effects for the zombies eating people or anything, they rival, if not conquer, the territory of Romero. I'm telling you, they were phenomenal. I think they could have done more with some parts of the film, but those practical effects were incredible. I wish we had better characters that I liked more outside of the two that I've talked about. There is a younger guy with like a shaved head that kind of gets on my nerves. The majority of the film is in English, but a lot of the time these characters speak their Indian language sometimes, so that's in there too if you don't like reading subtitles. It's not that common though. It's kind of off and on for a little bit, depending on who they're talking to at the time. But outside of that, Blood Quantum was really well shot for what it was, but then when you got to the 6 months later and got to like the chaos scenes where they're like trapped sometimes and whatever, like your typical zombie movie, that stuff was less well shot. They had less room to work with, I guess, in the places the camera had to sneak into. But I was very impressed with the film. And again, Michael Greyeyes, dude, he stole this movie. The guy playing the old man with the samurai sword, he killed it. He was a great, great character in the film. The actor did a wonderful job there. At the end of the day, though, I just wish it was a better movie overall. I don't think the ending is that satisfying. It's trying to really pull at your heartstrings. It didn't really get there for me. But I really, for the most part, enjoyed Blood Quantum. It's not an amazing film, but I would recommend it to people who sound like... If my review sounded interesting to you, you're the person that should watch this. Especially if you love those synthwave soundtracks and you love zombie films. This is a very cool, different type of zombie movie I enjoyed for the most part. And if I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it about a 3 out of 5 stars, man. Really cool flick for what it was. Probably not going to stay in the collection, but man, I recommend it tremendously. I think it was pretty cool for what it was. But again, it reminded me a lot of that Jonathan Mayberry short story I loved, and that was a nice little nod to him, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, have you seen Blood Quantum? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about it down below. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.